Well, what happened in court is these sentences were passed down, indeterminate sentences on the three men found guilty of rape and other sexual assaults because the judge deemed them to be a continuing threat to women. She said that their lack of remorse and their views towards women, young women in particular, clearly hadn't changed throughout this trial. They'd pleaded not guilty throughout. They'd refused to accept their actions. They'd forced these two 16-year-old girls to go through the rigours of a court trial and to have to give evidence during that trial. And she said that as a result of that, they showed little had changed in their attitudes towards women and determined them as a serious risk and gave them those indeterminate sentences, which means they could never be released from jail, but they certainly won't be allowed to be even eligible for parole for at least 7 years and 5 months, as you mentioned. Now, Stephanie Knight, she played a pivotal role in this, and for the police it was a difficult part of the investigation. She was just 17 when these offences took place back in 2009. She was the one who met these two 16-year-old girls. She was the one who told them that they were going to go for a night clubbing in town, and instead plied them with drugs and with alcohol and lured them to this house where the three men then carried out what were terrifying acts, some of them at knife point, in which all three men, according to the court here, were involved. Now, in terms of the police treatment of Stephanie Knight, they said that they were aware, and so was the judge when she gave her summing up in her sentencing here, that at some stage Stephanie Knight herself was a victim, but she soon became an offender. They said that she had distorted views of morality and what was appropriate behaviour. In fact, the police officer leading the investigation I spoke to a few moments ago, he told me that he said that she thought in her mind that this sort of behaviour had become appropriate. He said that she'd had a very troubled childhood. She'd lived in 23 different places as a result of being in care, and she had a very, very confused moral compass. But he said, and so did the judge, that in terms of her role in this, those two young girls would never have suffered this ordeal if it wasn't for Stephanie Knight luring them into the clutches of these three men. Briefly, a short time ago, there was a protest out here, families and friends of the three men who've been sentenced today saying that they feel that the trial was unfair. They're going to call for a retrial, but in the meantime, those three men have been given indeterminate sentences, and Stephanie Knight, the now 19-year-old girl who lured those two 16-year-olds into the clutches of these three rapists, she'll serve at least 7 years in a young offenders institute.